Welcome back to Orange Blossom Healing, the channel where I am excited to help you feel better with diet and lifestyle. Today I want to talk a little bit about how to bring all of this healthy stuff in and use it with your kids, and how to help your children to be healthy without it feeling like a chore. So hopefully I'm going to give you some good tips for that, and if it's something you feel like you need, then this is the episode for you. Just one thing, I am not going to share videos of my children in this video. For context, they are 8 and 6 years old, so I am not super far into my journey of being a parent. And although I love being transparent with you and talking to you honestly about my real life, it just doesn't sit well with me to share them visually online. So I have paid for the copyright to the images and videos that I am sharing to help to visually depict what I'm talking about in the video, but I won't actually feature my children. I hope you won't mind, but it's just a decision that's right for me, and no judgment if it feels different to you. So before we get started, I just want to say I am not a child expert. I am not a psychologist or trained specifically in helping children. I am a health coach and a fasting coach, and I work with adults, but I am, more important than any of that, a mother to 2 children. And over the years, some of my clients have asked me for some pointers, and more than anything, a few of my friends have seen some of the things that I do with my children and have said, how did you start doing that? And I figured it just might be useful for some of you to hear what I do to help my children to be healthy. So that's where I'm coming at from this video. I'm coming at it from a mum perspective, but obviously with my health coach knowledge in mind as well. So that being said, in this video, I am going to give you lots of tips and tricks for how to make healthy stuff seem more appealing to your children. And hopefully that will help you to get them on the right path so that you can do this as a family and not feel like it's a burden and something that you have to annoy them with all of the time. I think the most important thing to say, first of all, is that fundamentally, children do as we do and not as we say, right? So we can tell them to do something 100 times, but if we show them what to do, they're more likely to do it. So modeling, probably goes without saying, is the most important thing you can do. So if you want your kids to exercise, exercise. If you want your kids to eat salad, eat salad. If you want your kids to go to bed at a decent time and not look at screens before they go, you do the same. So I think that's a pretty obvious one, and probably something that we're all doing, but maybe sometimes it's easy to forget that children are always watching, and the science on this shows that they, especially in the first 7 years of life, learn so much from what they're seeing in their environment, so much more than from what we're busy telling them all the time and what maybe other influences are telling them. So that's just one to bear in mind when you're making your own choices. And it's a good one if you're already making really healthy decisions, because just know that even if it doesn't feel like it's going great with them, but they're seeing you make healthy decisions, that will be influencing the way they're feeling about things that they do in the future. So keep going. So just on screens, what we did is we did have Netflix and Amazon Prime and all that on-demand stuff when my children were born, because we used to watch it. But I noticed my little boy, my firstborn, when he was maybe 1.5 or 2, saying, you know, not that one, or next, kind of like, let's keep it moving. I don't want that. I want something else. And I just thought, oh my goodness, I don't like this. And my children never had tablets or any kind of screen that wasn't the television screen. So what we decided to do was just eliminate that kind of on-demand vibe, and we got a DVD player. We went way back to the 90s, and we said to them, you can have one film each day, and you can choose, and we just got a selection of appropriate films. And if we were going to have telly time, it wasn't even every day. Sometimes we were busy or out or whatever. But if they were going to have TV time, what they had was a film, because I feel like that is an investment, and you're investing in the story, and you're staying committed for 90 minutes or 2 hours. And it maybe helps your imagination grow a little bit more and helps your storytelling ability better, I feel, than the episodes. I know there's a lot to be said for the episodes out there now, and people are crazy for some of the ones that have come out and say that they're absolutely brilliant, and I'm sure there are things that are brilliant in them. But it's the idea for me of constantly being able to change that just wasn't working for my son, and wasn't working for how I would like him to behave in the world, and how I would like him to understand choice and himself in the context of the rest of society. I think that this is a problem for us too nowadays, that we have so much choice that is so personalized for us that you wouldn't be absurd for thinking that you can have everything you want right in the moment when you want it. But of course, life doesn't always play out like that, and it shouldn't play out like that, because we need empathy and understanding and community, and there's lots of other things and people to think about. So although in itself it seems harmless, I think when you put it in the context of everything else we're up against, and let's be honest, we are the first generation of parents to really be up against, this bombardment of ever moving, ever changing technology that's so on demand that we can always have it if we want it. So we're navigating this together and trying to work out what's okay and what's not okay. And I think just by removing that I want this and I want it now response, by taking away the on demand, it allowed him to become a little bit more patient, a little bit more invested, and a little bit less selfish is not the right word. You are narcissistic and selfish when you're 2, and you should be. But I think that has played out well over the years for the person that he's become. I think it has contributed to the way that he thinks about himself and what he's getting and when he's getting it. And I don't completely take it away from him in the sense, and my other son obviously has the same, but he doesn't remember ever having the on demand. He was just a baby at the time. When we go to their nanny and granddad's, or when they're at their auntie's house and they have all of this on-demand stuff, I obviously let them, get involved, and they've seen episodes and they've definitely abused it around other people's houses before, because again, I don't think, extreme limitations is the right way for me. I think that they need to be exposed to all of the options, but I like that limitation brings with it a little bit more thought and a little bit more investment in what they're watching, care about what they're choosing, and hopefully helps them to be a better participant in society. So just an idea. I think the first main thing that I do that people started commenting on is that I talk to my children, and I always have, like they are peers. So I obviously don't do this in every aspect of life, and there are some boundaries, and I am their mother clearly, and they are my children. But at the same time, when it comes to stuff related to why I'm asking them to do something, instead of just telling them or even asking them to do it, I always try to explain why I'm getting them to do that thing. So that's really important when it comes to the health stuff, because I think that it's more motivating as an adult when I understand the knowledge of why I'm choosing this potentially more difficult thing, or something that feels like a sacrifice, because I know that it's going to help me with X, Y, or Z. And it works exactly the same with children. So stuff like bedtime, right? Going to sleep. I've always explained to them that our brains need to rest, our bodies as well. And I've explained a little bit about the process of what's happening at nighttime and why children need to sleep more. Because often my children will say to me, well, why aren't you going to bed? And I explain that as children, because they're growing, they need more like 11 to 12 hours of sleep, or 9 to 10, depending on the age that they are, whereas an adult can handle 7 to 8 hours sleep, because we're not growing, okay? So our bodies are still healing, and our brains are still using nighttime to process everything that's happened and to fix any problems that need fixing in our body. But of course, we need less of that as we're not growing anymore versus children. And even just that small change of explaining why helps my children to accept that they have to go to bed a little bit earlier. And this idea of explaining things goes for pretty much everything else as well. So for example, food, one trick that I've used that I think has worked out really well, that every meal that we have, first of all, we have together. So we sit down around the table at lunch if we're at home, and dinner every single evening, and we talk and we enjoy our food, and we prioritize that time to be together, so that food becomes important and a centerpiece of our lives. But also what we do around the table, and maybe I did more as they were smaller. Now I feel like it's a bit more ingrained. Maybe we don't do it every day, but we talk about the ingredients on the plate and where they came from. So if you're looking at any kind of meal, say a lasagna, and you break it down and you talk about where the pasta comes from. And okay, what does pasta have in it? It has flour. And where does the flour come from? It comes from wheat. And what do they do to the wheat? And we have a whole discussion about that. Okay, and now we have the layer of ragu, and that's got beef in it. And where does the beef come from? And it's also got peas and carrots. And we have a whole conversation trying to identify, so that the kids begin to build this relationship with whole foods and with their food and why they're eating it and what effect it has in their body. So we always started that conversation because I wanted them to understand where food comes from, so that when they want maybe something packaged or something I don't want them to have later in the shop, I can say, right, well, where do those foods come from? And they can tell me that in that packet, or maybe they don't know what's in the food, but I can say, okay, that contains sugar, E320, E468, maltodextrin and glucose syrup, and they'll say, right, what are those? And I'll say, exactly. Okay, so they don't come from nature. Obviously sugar does, and I've explained to them that when we put processed sugar into food, rather than having the sugar cane or an alternative source of sugar, what that does to our body and how it affects our brain and how it affects a huge spike in our blood. And so we've had all of these conversations about what food is and where food comes from, and that helps them to understand when I'm saying, no, you can't have that. I don't want you to have that because of the effect it's going to have on you. Now, I will say here, obviously, there's a fine line, and food can get really complex, and maybe you don't feel drawn to giving your children as much information as I'm explaining in this video, but I've done this really slowly, so just little conversations every day, and I've really tried to not be obsessive. So obviously, if my children go to a party and they get sweeties in their party bag, they have the sweeties. Or if we're going to the beach and their grandparents want to buy them an ice cream, they have an ice cream. That's fine. We do have the conversation about what's in that ice cream and what's the difference between maybe a bright blue bubblegum ice cream in a packet versus a dairy made on the farm ice cream that you might find at a farm shop. We do have those conversations, but I also don't stop them from having things because I want them to participate and not feel limited. I just want them to understand. And I have seen numerous times this play out where maybe they'll have something that they don't usually have, and then they have a tummy ache, or they have a headache, or they feel really tired or really irritable later. And I'll just say to them, hey, what did you eat earlier? And so they make this link between what they're eating and how they're feeling and how their behavior is. And that allows them to make choices. They don't always make great choices. They often will choose the sweeties, or they will choose the ice cream or the whatever. But at least that they are making those connections, so that I hope when they're older, they will make better choices. Okay, so obviously coming at this from a health coach perspective, food is huge for me, and my whole philosophy with Orange Blossom Healing is eat green, act kind, think happy, which is an acronym for EAT, because food is so important to me. In my fasting community, we're fasting foodies because we love food just as much as we love fasting. So food is a really big part of my life, and I love it dearly. So that's why I think I've spent so much time talking to my children about it and teaching them about it. And maybe you don't have the same level of passion as me, but just the simple idea of talking around the table about what's on your plate can be the beginning of many conversations that the children will start themselves that can take you down paths that maybe you wouldn't go if you didn't have that conversation. So I hope that that one's helpful. Aside from food, I obviously think that exercise is super important, and movement. So the act kind part of my philosophy is all about acting kind to others, absolutely, but also acting kind towards ourselves. So I talk to my children about what acting kind means. But like I said at the beginning of the video, talking is one thing and modeling is a complete other thing. So every single day, and this works for my schedule, you have to look at your own schedule to see whether it does, but every single morning when I wake up, I come downstairs and I exercise. So sometimes it looks like just 10 minutes of yoga because I don't have a lot of time. Other days it looks like a 30 to 40 minute session of yoga followed by a 30 to 40 minute session of weightlifting. And then I'll take myself out and do some grounding in the garden, and it's a whole big process. But whatever the weather, whatever the day, I always move my body in the morning. And 9 times out of 10, my children wake up either with me and witness the whole thing or during my exercising. And so they always see me doing that. And they understand because I said to them at the beginning, this is something Mummy needs to do. I do it to keep my body healthy and happy. And they understand that I'm not going to deal with the things that they maybe want me to deal with until I've dealt with doing my exercise. And so by prioritizing it, I think I'm showing them that you have to prioritize movement. And that's not a problem for my children. They go out, they move their bodies all the time. But just by demonstrating the importance that I give that, I hope that when they're older and have the choice not to move, or maybe aren't as drawn to running and jumping as they are now, that they will choose to anyway. The other thing I do with movement is I always get physical and play when we're out and about. So I make a point of taking my children out to nature all the time. We go almost every day, if not every day, to a park, or even if it's just a playground or the woods or the beach or whatever. We're very lucky that we have the time to do that, and I make time for it. And when I'm there, I always try to do things that they want to do. So things like balancing on tree trunks, or hanging off of branches, or in the playground, you know, hanging and balancing is easy. There's loads of equipment for that. Or just running around and playing with them in ways that they find fun. Because I think if you do that with them, not only are you getting yourself some exercise in, but you're motivating them and stimulating them to do those things more, rather than maybe letting them play just for however long they want to and then coming away. So getting involved is another one that's good for movement. You may have heard me talk about my free health guide before. So I really believe in free health. It's accessible to everybody and easy to do. And so I obviously share this with my children too. They are my absolute priority, and I want them to understand it more than anybody else. So gratitude is one of my free health methods, and I have seen from the research that gratitude impacts not only the way that we feel in the moment and the way we face the day, but it actually changes the way our brain works neurochemically to make us happier, healthier beings. So having that knowledge gives me the information I need to make that a priority with the children. So really simply, every single day before we go to bed, we talk about at least one thing that we're grateful for from the day. I actually heard a friend recently say that she has started a practice where she, with her husband, writes down something she's grateful for on a piece of paper and folds it and puts it in a jar, and then they keep this kind of gratitude jar. And if they're feeling down, or maybe at the end of each week, they can go back and look at the things that they're grateful for, which I thought was beautiful. So that might be an alternative way to get your children to think about gratitude, by just writing it down and putting it in the jar. Another big one from my free health guide, and that I believe in and speak to my children about, is grounding. So first of all, I model it. Every single day I go outside and get my feet on the ground, come rain or shine, and they see me doing that. And second of all, when they're not well, one of the first things I get them to do is go outside and ground. So I do encourage them to ground, and throughout the summer, they're often shoes and socks off anyway, running around wherever we are. But obviously through the winter, I don't want to make them come out in the ice and the rain if they don't want to. I don't want to make it a chore, so they don't. They see me doing it, but they don't do it necessarily themselves. But what they do is, as soon as they're not well, I make them come outside and just sit on a chair and put their feet on the ground, because I know that it reduces inflammation in the body and will help them to heal faster. It also helps wounds to heal faster and has a ton of other benefits. I have a video about grounding here if you want to go check that out. Another thing for movement is walking. So not only do I do the exercise in the morning and get involved with their play, but I also make them walk. And I do get eye rolls about this, you know, oh, I don't want to go on another long walk, I can't be bothered, it's boring. But every single time we walk, they have a great time, because when we get there, we find a way to get sticks. Sticks are the trick for me with my children. So I have boys, and I do think that the desire to kind of destroy things and bash things is a little bit more male, having observed some of my friends who have girls and being an auntie to nieces. But obviously it depends on your child. So from my perspective, #boymum, if you get your kids to have a stick at the beginning and just bash kind of the weeds, and obviously I'm not encouraging them to break anything or do any damage, but bashing tree trunks and bashing weeds as they go along is such a good way to motivate them and keep them walking for longer than they otherwise would. I have noticed with my girly nieces that they are more into kind of spotting the birds and the butterflies and maybe the unusual flowers, and so there are different ways to engage children when you're on a walk, and I'm going to make a whole nother video about that anyway. But making it fun is definitely a trick for getting them to walk with you for a little bit longer. And also making it a family adventure, so something that we do at the weekend with daddy, who's working all week and doesn't get the chance to come with us. We then get to go out all together and enjoy an adventure and have a destination, and that makes it more exciting. Another really great thing that you can do around this time of year in spring is to start growing things with the kids. So it's really easy to grow tomatoes, or you could plant wildflowers, but I find that something that you can eat gives them so much more satisfaction. And again, we do this to plant something from seed and grow it and watch the whole life cycle to then tomatoes actually growing that we can take in and eat or cook with, allows them to see how long it takes and how much effort and thought it takes to grow food. It doesn't just happen without any effort. And so we've talked about the appreciation for our farmers and where our food comes from again, in terms of how difficult it is to grow and how much of an effort it would be for us to make ourselves 100% self-sustaining. And so I think that that is a great thing to teach the children and for them to understand via the process of growing and watching something grow themselves. And it's also another opportunity for grounding, because obviously you're getting your hands on the soil as much as possible whilst you're working with fruit and veg and flowers or whatever you might be growing. Okay, coming back to the food again, another couple of things that I do with them are, first of all, I let them cook. So again, giving them the trust and independence to actually use utensils in the kitchen, but also to cook with whole foods. So to understand what foods go into making things taste good and what herbs and spices do for the body and how they taste and how we can include them in our food. So I've tried to get them involved in that from as early as possible and to give them the responsibility of preparing food regularly so that they can actually enjoy that process, but also because we eat food with our eyes and with our ears and with our noses before we taste it. So it's another way to get kids to eat things that maybe they would be a little bit reticent to eat or to try, because all of those senses, whilst you're cooking something, allow the brain to process and maybe be a little bit more accepting of food. And there is actually science behind that. So that's something that I've tried with things that they're not so keen on, like broccoli. My kids don't like broccoli. It's just one of those vegetables that I think most children don't like. There is a pasta recipe, a pasta sauce recipe that we make now that is with broccoli. And so they see how it's cooked in a way that then tastes good on the plate. And that just helps them to be more accepting rather than rolling their eyes at me about eating broccoli. We also forage for food. So as the seasons change in the UK and you can go and actually find lots of things outside, we go and pick berries or pick leaves, obviously in an informed way. I make sure that I know what we're doing before we leave. And maybe I don't have all of that knowledge ready, but there's so many resources out there that you can use to get that information. And one of their favorites, for example, is elderberry. So we make elderberry syrup because there is an abundance of elderberries in the UK around late August or early September. And then we actually do the process together of removing the berries from the stalks, and they understand that the stalks are poisonous, so we don't want to include those, and then we cook them down and we make the syrup, and then they enjoy that throughout the winter. And so they're actually not only nourishing their own bodies with that intense burst of vitamin C, but they're healing their bodies if and when they come across problems later on in the season. So they're learning by doing to do those things. And I think, again, with the coming back to modeling rather than telling, instead of me just giving them medicine or doing that whole process myself and then giving it to them, they get to experience what that involves. And there are a few other things I do with the children. For example, another one of my free health hacks is exhale, which is all about breath work. And so I have taught them about breath work and how it can help us to come back to our rest and digest parasympathetic nervous system and feel much calmer much more quickly. Of course, children struggle to regulate their emotions. Adults struggle to regulate our emotions, so of course that's more difficult for them. But again, I'm just equipping them with lots of different ways that they can calm themselves. So sometimes I'll say to them, if they're really worked up or angry or they've had an argument or whatever, or they're stropping and storming out, I will say to them, you have tons of choices, pick something, find a way to calm yourself down. And so they can choose. They know that if they hug somebody, they're welcome to hug me, that regulates their emotional system. They know that they can breathe, and they have a few different breathwork techniques that I've taught them that they know how to count through themselves, so they could choose breathwork. They know that grounding will help them immediately to return to their parasympathetic nervous system, so they're welcome to go outside and get their feet on the ground. Or they can take themselves away and do something they enjoy, like reading or making something, in order to just calm down. So I do give them kind of information in the form of words about those, and importantly, I try to do it myself. So if I am in the car, for example, sometimes that's something that can give me rage or bursts of emotion that maybe I wouldn't be having in other situations, and so that's where I need to show them that I am breathing in order to calm myself down. Or if we're out and about and grounding is an option, that I am grounding, or that I am asking them for a cuddle to help me regulate because I'm feeling a little bit stressed out. And it's amazing how quickly they'll pick up on that, and they'll be the ones to say to me, Mum, you need to breathe. Mum, you need a cuddle. Mum, and it's just wonderful to hear them say that, because although in the moment it's frustrating because I just want to scream and swear, I recognize that it's worked, and so they're helping me to calm down quicker than I would if they weren't there, because I'm immediately going back to the resources that I've given them to help them calm down. So that's it for today's video, because as I said, I am not an expert. I am just a mum doing my best. My kids aren't perfect and I am far from perfect, but I hope that there is something in there that maybe gives you an idea or helps you and inspires you to give your children a little bit more credit than maybe they sometimes get from other sources, because they're so clever and they pick up on things so quickly that really we need to be nurturing them to be better humans than us. And I think that these are some of the ways that we can do that. So please do share in the comments below if you have other ideas. I'm sure there's a ton of stuff that I missed, but this is just some of the ones that I was thinking about today, and I hope that some of them were useful to you. Thanks for watching. Have a beautiful day, and I will see you next time.